It's dookshelf.com. You're now rocking with TDF Everything. Spoiled Rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Good morning.
It's Spoiled Rotten with me, Daniel.
And Ben. And it's the day after St. Patrick's Day. We are not ridiculously hungover, but I'm just feeling the day drinking from yesterday. That's all.
That'll happen.
We're still going to have a good episode lined up for you today. We're actually going to do something kind of unique. We're actually going to skip over the most obvious things that most of you would have expected us to talk about, which is the Infinity War trailer. Which, by the way, if you haven't bought your tickets for Infinity War already,
good, because then I'll be able to do it
already. So by the time you hear this Monday, it's
too late.
Sorry. That's just not going to happen for you unless you
and don't try and buy tickets for other times. That will make it easier for me.
Exactly. Like 7 p.m. is definitely when nobody wants to watch movies at all. Everyone wants to watch movies right before the crack of midnight.
Yeah.
That's definitely the thing.
Go to those ones.
Yeah. I mean, it is a Thursday night, midnight showing.
Yeah. So go to the midnight one.
Be faithful to it. Just go to the midnight one and keep the 7 p.m. people.
All right.
So we're skipping over the Infinity War trailer.
We're going to just talk about two things today.
Yeah. Two very important things. Jessica Jones and Tomb Raider.
Important in that they lined up with when we were recording with this.
Exactly.
So yeah, let's do it. Let's get right into season 2 of Jessica Jones.
Yep.
What are your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts of this season 2 of Jessica Jones was this is more of a season about Jerry Hogarth as well as Trish Walker. I mean, like it was definitely they got. Way
I will say
more
this: I like the Jerry
arcs.
Hogarth stuff.
I love the Hogarth stuff.
Yeah,
that was amazing.
They really made me feel for her, and I always liked the character, but I was like, oh man, like she can be hurt.
Yeah,
oh my,
exactly.
I mean, I don't know how that really amounts to a Jessica Jones story, but here we are.
Well, it's the idea of like just. All three of these women, and of course, this being like a women's-led show.
Yeah, all female directors. I'm assuming writers.
This season, I have no idea about
or
the writers.
head writers.
I can't confirm that.
Yeah.
But it was released on International Women's Day.
True.
Like surprise drop for Netflix, which is a brilliant move on their part. It clearly is telling that story about women and the oppressed, even with Malcolm and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really good. I mean. Storytelling aspect from that standpoint, and having Jerry Hogarth, which was a character that I never considered to be oppressed or having to deal with many issues. She was just like that kind of elite, high level.
She was just someone who accomplishes things.
Having the backstory of her coming from poverty and having to fight to get to where she is right now, and then all having that taken away with the ALS diagnoses, or is it with the healer? But well,
no,
I mean,
I feel like they just straight up were like, no, that guy's not a healer.
Yeah.
He just wanted to rob you.
Yeah, and she was legit like, oh yeah, like no,
that
it totally worked.
I was really sad for her when she goes home because like Jessica's like, hey man, you might want to check out because he is not a thing. Like he wasn't part of IGH's thing. Yeah. And then she's like, no, I felt something. I'm not like some country bumpkin. I know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then she goes home to that empty house, and I was like, oh boy.
Yep. That was
this is effective.
That was a tough scene. That was a tough scene to watch for sure. And that really hits home for a lot of like people suffering for like chronic diseases that get promised all these like remedies and everything like that, and she must have felt that to lie to herself to be like, no, I'm not doing this. But I mean, like I said,
and I guess it also sucks because she lives in a world where if someone's like, I can heal you, like it's not like you can't just automatically dismiss it because she obviously interacts with Jessica Jones and to a lesser extent Iron Fist like all the time, so she probably would be like, yeah, I guess so. Like if he says it, like,
and you know what? That's the really interesting thing. I never really considered that. Is just like you have a high level elitist, like borderline psychopathic, like lawyer that is often definitely like, oh, I can see the logic and everything. If you're not a doctor, screw you. But she clearly lives in this world where there's like supers and like crazy beings.
Well, she tried to use Purple Man last year to like do what she wanted. I mean, it backfired, but like, she was like, oh, things like this are real.
Yep.
I'm going to use it.
Yep.
This is great.
Absolutely. So definitely fear for her character. Don't know actually what happened there. It's definitely insinuated upon that nothing happened there, but we'll see what happens. Because, I mean, like, that came from Jessica Jones as well, who is extremely cynical.
No, but she went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, I don't know who you're talking about.
Right. Fair enough.
And he is crazy, but he doesn't lie. Like, I think they set that up. That, like, he's, like, clearly off, but he isn't like, oh, I'm going to deceive people. He just is like, no, I've got a good idea, even if it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
And so when he was like, that's not a patient of mine, that's nobody, I was like, oh, okay. And the fact that, like, it was quite clear that they were just conning her.
Yep.
Like, that woman's like, oh, this powerful lawyer can get my boyfriend out of jail? Great.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like, I'm going to play you.
And I think I liked I liked when Jerry kind of, like, pulls up and you think, oh, she's going to kill them. But it's like, no, she's going to get her to kill him. Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
Good for her. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, that's not the best way to think about life, but I was like, in this comic book show, good.
In a fictional comic book aspect of it.
But I think my overall issue with the show, like most Netflix shows, so what's the difference? Is
dragged on too long.
Yeah, those first, except for that in this one, I felt like the first 6 episodes were bad, and then from 7 on, it was good.
Well, that's exactly
Whereas,
how I
like,
felt. Like,
most shows they do, it's kind of like there's like a halfway point, and you're kind of like, oh, we don't really need all these episodes.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. The first 6 episodes, I was sitting there, I was like, at what point is this Jessica Jones' show? She's the titular character, character, and she's not doing anything. It's all Trish that's doing stuff, and it's just like, oh, okay, well, that's very interesting, this angle that we decided to take this character.
But I've heard a lot of people review it, and they love the first 6. So I think we're just gonna. I think this is where Netflix Marvel is going, and we're gonna be on the outs because I think people liked about Punisher, that dialed in thing and making it so specific. It's obviously reaching people. So like a lot of people who have dealt with PTSD and for this season, especially like slipping in and out of addiction. Yeah. I think that really spoke to a bunch of people, and people really like it. For me, obviously, I'm trying to look at it as like some entertainment from a comic book property, and that's not what this show is trying to do.
No, it's not at all. I mean, I can tell you, for me personally, having like a history with drugs and alcohol, this show definitely hit home to me a lot, in the sense where, like, with that one episode where Jerry Hogarth gets that diagnosis of ALS, we don't figure out what it is for a while, so I automatically assume it's cancer.
So did I.
But I mean, like, with ALS being so much worse in her position, not like cancer treatable and all that kind of stuff, but ALS being like literally everything you work so hard to do, it's going to slip away from you moments at a time. Like, that was way worse degenerative disease from her character. Even her reaction of being like, you know what? I just got diagnosed with this thing. I'm going to make the most irresponsible decisions ever right now. Get a whole bunch of, like, sex workers, get a whole bunch of cocaine and a whole bunch of drugs, and just, like, have a crazy-ass party. And the moment it's over, she was like, just everyone get out right now. It's like, I'm done with this. Like, get out right now. Like, I can relate to that, because there's been a period of time where it's always been like, oh, okay, if this one thing happened, well, literally nothing else happened, so I'm just going to make stupid decisions, and I know that. So, I mean, it really spoke to me with that, and they're definitely leaning into the drugs, alcohol dependency, the darker side of things, which I was really, really surprised with, that they actually pushed the envelope that far this season. Because there was stuff that...
I think that's... So, that's where I bump up against the season, is like... You get to a place where obviously it works for the people it works for, but for me, like, I'm kind of like, oh, like, I would watch a show about people's addictions,
right?
But do I need the, like, superpowers hanging over that to detract from digging into that, which kind of happens? Or
that's a good point.
For me, I was here for, like, because I thought they did a good job in the first season. I hate to say it because it's like the male villain, I miss him. But I would, at one point I was like, you know what? I would have rather not have that episode with Kilgrave. Like, I would have rather they just kept, but then even in that episode, I was like, oh, like, if that first half of the season was like her trying to shake Kilgrave in her head and then her mom, like, as an actual physical thing in the world, and like having those two things bump up against each other, like, that would have been a good season. Like, that would have been a good story arc. But like, I feel like they're shying away from the comic book aspect of things.
Oh, they're definitely shying away from it.
it's weird because like why do it? Like why not just be like, we're gonna do this show about this. And I guess this season exposed what I was worried about before season 1, which is like, if we're doing a show about a hero who doesn't want to be a hero, like, where are we gonna go? I feel like that's gonna be a lot of wheel spinning, and I feel like this season has a lot of wheel spinning because until that episode 7 where they go back in time and you're like, okay, like this is what happened, this is what she's dealing with. It's kind of just a lot of her being like, oh, like, and other people have seen like, no, I get it. It's like her dealing with her first actual kill, like that killing, like feeling his neck snap. She's dealing with that. I'm like, yeah, but I guess that's what slows down a comic book story then, because you can't really dwell on Batman being like, oh, and I felt his bones crack when I snapped his arm, and that's really making me. Like, you're kind of like, oh, like where's the forward motion? And as I said, I would watch a show about her dealing with that as just a civilian, and if like not have to deal with but she's also someone who can like almost fly and like stop buses that are trying to leave a terminal. See,
the way I see it was that, and I get what you're saying, the comic book aspect of this kind of like removes the seriousness of it, but
it's not that it removes it, it's that it's something you feel like they just have to be like, oh yeah, and here's comic book stuff for you. It's because
as a back burner, as opposed to you're saying this is a comic book show first and foremost.
Well, no, it doesn't have to be. I mean, yeah, it does have to be because they put that big Marvel thing at the beginning. But like, I'm saying all these people working on this show could have just made a show about someone who went through what Jessica Jones, because you can still do a story about like a girlfriend who was in an abusive relationship and kills her boyfriend, and then that spins out into whatever it spins out to. And you can have all those different characters, and because like, as much as we say like Trish had a lot to do, I did kind of feel like, oh, like, is she really going to keep complaining that she doesn't have powers? Like, all those moments feel empty to me. And it's because it's a group of people who are dealing with something so serious and meaty. And then they have to be like, oh, but and they're in a superhero world, so she wants powers. That's because like I feel like that's where the story, if you look at it on paper, that's where they're saying Trish is coming from. Of like, she can't believe that Jessica Jones gets powers, and she wastes them, and she wants to do good. Her and Malcolm are people who want to do the right thing, which you can still have, but like she said, like up until the last episode, she's still like, you don't deserve your powers, and it's like, is that really what she's doing, or is she someone who wants to do the right thing, and she doesn't need to have Jessica Jones as her like, I can't believe she has power. I can see that she wants powers, and I feel like she can just have that want independent of what Jessica Jones is.
I feel like her frustration is really more of someone that's like really, really oppressed in that situation. I mean, like,
she feels helpless because she lives in the shadow of her mom without powers, and Jessica with powers. But that's what I'm saying. Because the show is Jessica Jones, they have to find a way to relate it back to Jessica Jones.
Absolutely.
And Jerry Hogarth had a whole storyline that didn't have to relate back to Jessica Jones.
And the point I'm trying to make is like especially with Will Simpson. I mean, like with the character Will coming back, and like Nuke coming back in the first like 1 or 2 episodes, and them killing him off pretty fast. I was like, that was a shock to me. But like the idea that she could never feel so like the resentment of Trish being like to Jessica Jones, like, you don't understand what this is like, having to be afraid all the time. You literally have this power that allows you to not be afraid, and yet you're pissing it away by getting pissed drunk all the time, and just like ignoring everything and not wanting to deal with anything other than yourself, let alone deal with yourself at the same time. So there's that resentment. And of course Malcolm has a very, very similar things. Like, dude, we're motivated to do stuff right now, whether or not. And
see, I buy Malcolm's back more than Trish's, because Trish grew up with Jessica Jones.
Exactly.
So like, you can't just be like all of a sudden like, wait a minute, like that's her whole life is seeing Jessica Jones treat her powers like that.
Absolutely. But
she's only ever known Jessica Jones with powers. It's not like she just got powers. And she's like, wait a minute, like if I had like. That stuff she would have had to have processed,
of course,
or if she didn't process.
But
where was that in the first season?
It would have been brought upon. There was evidence of that in the first season with Trish, for sure. I mean, like, Trish was like hardcore doing self-defense stuff, whatever she could.
No, but like her thing wasn't like, you're wasting your powers. It was more like, sorry, it wasn't a resentment. Yes. It was more like, come on, you can do better. So she was more like Uncle Ben type of like, come on, if you've got stuff, you should be
doing better stuff with it, as opposed to those of us.
It wasn't like a jealous, like, oh, like I can't believe she has. That's what I'm saying. It felt like a symptom of them needing to figure out how this all plays,
how to relate to Jessica,
or like the comic book aspect of this, because you could have Trish, because the whole thing of like teasing, oh, she's gonna, she's Hellcat in the comics, and it's but like, is that really what her character path is on? Like, do we need to
that's what it
veer
seems
into
like it's on right now.
I know, but that's because they are like forcing it. It's like
I think
she can still have a different thing. Like, she could have been the villain. It could have been like, oh, this is my son.
She was a villain. But
to
the point where it was like it was one of the good villains in the sense where it was like Jessica Jones was capable of doing all these stuff, but it was the mirror opposite of Jessica Jones, in the exact mirror opposite, in the sense where she didn't have any powers but had the motivation. Jessica had the powers but no motivation to do anything until the very, very end when things got real for her. I remember even watching halfway through the season being like, there's nothing pulling me in about Jessica about this season. And that's the problem with this season, is that the moment you have... So arguably the biggest bad of the bad guy, is Kilgrave for Jessica Jones, in the sense where that's her abuser, that's her trauma person, that's Kilgrave is constantly in her head, and by that one episode, in which I really, really did appreciate that episode, because to show this is what Jessica's trying to get away from, was a very, very, very interesting.
It was just an awkwardly placed one.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why she's trying to drown that out, and we totally get that now. With David Tennant coming back for that one episode. But the idea here that the season 1 dealt with that already. Season 2, if it wasn't going to lean in heavily to the psychological aspect, which it really didn't that much until the very, very end, it would have been a terrible season, and because of the fact that she had dealt with one of the biggest issues that she had to deal with. Yeah. And now what they did was they forced Trisha's origin story in for the first 6 episodes to develop her character for season 3, because that would be the ultimate kind of conflict there, because there was no big conflict in this season. It was just Jessica, the big conflict was Jessica dealing with herself.
Well, the big conflict is what is she going to do with her mother?
Exactly.
So it's like a Captain America Bucky type situation.
Yes.
But that's, I think, why again I bump up against the season, because it's like they didn't want to commit to the mom being a bad guy that she has to take. They didn't want to commit to Trish being an actual bad guy.
That's true.
So there's even that doctor become I don't remember his name, but he's not a bad guy really. He's just doing something he shouldn't be doing, and then it's like, oh yeah, I realize that, I'll kill myself.
Yeah.
It's like they don't have that aspect of what I thought really worked for season 1, which is this is a bad person. You can give him shades of oh yeah, I don't really know if I'm a bad guy, and then realize, oh no, he left to his own devices, he will just do the wrong thing every time.
Right.
We need to stop him. Well, they didn't want to have that, which is fine, because then they'll get knocked from aping what they did in the season 1. But it's so then we're just telling a dramatic story, which is fine. But it leaves me being like, oh well,
this is a superhero movie at the end of the day.
It's a property that begs you. I don't know. I don't know what they would do. It was just that was my issue with the season. I was kind of like, I get what they're trying to do, and it's the problem I had with Punisher too. It's so good you don't see him in the suit, and I'm like, yeah, but then you dealt with what you ran up against with it's really weird watching him just shoot up a bunch of people.
Yeah, it's
because
so
you're removing the element that lets everyone just enjoy what's going on. It's it's so real now that do I really want to spend time on any kind of joking around if we're dealing with these serious subjects, or do I want to deal with a quick we're gonna go beat up bad guys? It's we're dealing with real issues that they do seem kind of mutually exclusive, actually.
So, one thing that I could say about this is that one thing I've noticed with the Marvel movies is that, yes, they have Marvel media in general. Now, with exception, and when I say this, I'm not taking into account Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because I haven't seen that.
Yeah, no one's watching that on this podcast
since episode 1. Episode 3, anyways. Anyways, so when I say that, what I've noticed with Marvel is that they're really, really taking the time and consideration to write a fully fleshed out bad guy now, in the sense where the bad guy, you can understand the motives behind. Like Kilgrave, you're like, you know what, that's extreme, but I understand why you're saying these things. Versus before, you would never be able to understand something. You'd be like, yeah, that's straight up bad, because why would you do this, X, Y, and Z?
Right.
You can't understand those motives. And I think one of the things, because I appreciate this season on two different levels. As a comic books show, I did not appreciate this so much because everything to that point was trying to get too real with too many things. But if I just remove the comic book element from this show, which is actually a very easy thing to do because there's only a few scenes in this whole show, in this season, that make it like, oh yeah, that, remember, this is a supernatural element.
Yeah, like the Wizard.
Exactly.
But I was just
the Wizard episode was like, oh right, we're still dealing with bad guys here, kind of deal, or like not bad guys, I should say, but like superhero people.
We're dealing with okay, but sorry, you can finish your point.
So, but the idea of having Trish as well as Hogarth having a little bit of redemption and humanity in her character now, Trish. Having this addiction edge and her wanting to do good, and then now understanding Will Simpson's kind of perspective was like, if you could do one thing that made you do something better, would you not do it? And that's always like the professional athlete thing is like, yeah, absolutely, I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, we got to have an even playing field and all that kind of stuff. I like the idea that now the good and the bad are seen in both these characters, which is what speaks so well to me from an addiction standpoint as well as a mental health standpoint, because those that struggle with addiction and mental health issues, like, they'll know that sometimes the things that they're doing are quote unquote bad, but they're not bad people. It's just elements of both. There's like two sides of the coin.
Yeah.
And I think this is what this season did very, very well. However, from a purely character-driven standpoint, that was really well done. However, from the overall season having a purpose, that was weird to me in the sense where it was like, okay, was it Jessica's redemption? Because that only, or like, was it her reach out to humanity? Because that only happened in like 1 or 2 seasons. So that just comes out of nowhere. I mean, 1 or 2 episodes, that comes out of nowhere. I mean, yeah, the superintendent to the building is like there constantly and they're challenging that relationship, and having that kid there is a really good thing to bring in her humanity. But that really she makes that leap into that whole thing. It's like, yeah, you know what? I will come over for dinner. Your standing invitation still good? Cool. She just does that the last episode versus what I would have liked to do is is her try to do it, her freak out, and then just leave or something like that.
So that's not what the story was. Or sorry, that's not what her character arc was happening. Her character arc was she holds so dear to who she thinks her family is.
Yes.
So when the season starts, it's just Trish.
Yep.
That's the only. Malcolm is. He's on the cusp of where she's gonna let him in.
Yeah.
To her family, because her parents died. Her parents and brother died. That was actually her family. They're gone. Right. So only Trish is her family now. And then the mom comes in, and then it kind of becomes like, oh, like who's she gonna side with? Because Trish wants to expose the mom type stuff, and then it's like, oh, but like, and then she has the moment of like, well, that's my real mom, so this is my real family.
Yeah.
And then in the last episode, you killed my only family, basically saying you're not my family anymore, and my mom's dead. And then she can move on to the next fresh family she's going to hold on to.
Right.
So that's why that happens in that order.
I didn't even think about that. That actually makes a lot of sense.
So that's the progression. But what I'm saying is stuff like that gets lost in the mix because it gets lost in the shuffle because they're trying to do so many things. And I'm watching it, I'm thinking like, do they know what they want to do? Like, it does seem like there's a conflict with even the writer's room of like, what are they trying to get at? Because the mom just straight up confused me.
Mom is super confusing to me.
Because like I get her struggle. I get like she's like, oh, like I don't know what happened to me. This is crazy.
Right.
And she had her family and the doctor.
Yeah.
And then when he gets taken away, that kind of is just like, well, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get that was my only tether, and she goes off. But then they still don't want to commit to her actually being a villain, and it's like,
see, that's the thing. I would have liked for them to be a little bit more clear cut about that and have her actually be the villain, so that
someone needed to actually be the villain for this show.
There was no actual villain
to land. That's what I'm saying is like, even in the early MCU when people were like, they've got a villain problem. At least there was someone where you're like, yep, that's the bad guy we got to stop. And then I think they went too far this way into like, we love bad guys and like,
yes,
and look at this, and then and that's what people said about Iron Man 2. I didn't really see it, but I remember that review, and just something that stayed in my head of like, yeah, like if you can tell that the filmmaker is in love with that character too much, they're probably going to protect them and not let too many bad things happen, and then it gets to the point of like, yeah. So now I don't know what's happening other than it's just a story about people with addictions, which is fine.
Right.
But did we need the powers and all that stuff going on as well?
Very, very good. It's a very good point because, I mean, like, arguably, yeah, it's just it's a season of television that suffers from not having a clear, defined, like direction of where it wanted to go, and what it wanted to do was just what it rather did was, hey, we have some really, really great characters. Let's write some really amazing story arcs. Because I mean, that was if you were to tell me, if you were to ask me overall this whole season, I wasn't impressed. If you were to ask me specifically to be like, let's talk about character arcs, yes, Hogarth was awesome. She got redemption. You understood her from an origin.
Well, she didn't get redemption, but
I mean, she's redeeming herself, and the fact that she's.
I mean, she did just encourage someone to kill someone.
Yes, but I mean, still, it's still Hogarth fashion, but she's becoming more of a human. You can connect with her more because in the beginning, I was like, oh, we have an ALS or cancer diagnosis. Hogarth is going to go wild. She's the villain of this season because she's going to be like, hey, nothing else matters right now. I'm going to take everything that I own and therefore be a criminal or something like that. Ended up not. So
you're adding another person that I have to be like, oh yeah, they didn't want to commit on because it's like. And yeah, she could have been the villain, and then they were like, no, like everyone's good in their own way. And it's like,
but they kept her to be like, no, we're going to be her main ensemble and cast, and that's probably because Carrie-Anne Moss is so good in that.
Oh yeah, like they need to keep her. Like,
because if they made
she
her
also
evil,
made
she would have died.
Iron Fist great.
Yeah.
Was she in Defenders? I don't remember.
She was. I don't.
Who
know.
cares?
The point is, for like 1 or 2 episodes.
The point is, every time she's on screen, she's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I love her character.
What's his face was in it for no reason?
Foggy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was weird. I really like that one scene too. It's like, don't presume that you're my friend. Don't presume that we have to fight them. You are this. You are this. You are this to me. Like,
it seemed like a Daredevil season 3 scene though. Like I was kind of like,
it's a bit weird.
What's he doing here? Because it got to the end of my, he never came back. That was just a thing that happened. Yeah, I think I don't think this would make it better. It would certainly help my enjoyment. I think they're at the point now where they can start like having the other characters guest on the shows.
Yes,
it would make me feel better about this whole thing. Like I just like I said in Punisher, when that guy drops down and it just was Punisher, I was like, oh, that could have been Daredevil or something. Like, they've all had their solo stuff now. Like, you can start crossing over. Like even MCU, like Hulk is in Thor Ragnarok.
Yes,
like stuff like that. Like, and I don't need them to be like, oh, this is a team up thing. I just meant like for a scene, like instead of Foggy showing up, it could have been one of the leads showing up.
It could be. I do appreciate Foggy showing up a little bit more, like the support people. I appreciate that a lot more, and I appreciated the fact that this was not. There was no Eva Mendes in this one. No, it was Eva. Is it Eva Mendes?
Oh, you're talking about Rosario Dawson.
Rosario Dawson. Yeah, sorry.
I didn't appreciate that. That's another female strong lead that could have been in this whole.
She wasn't necessary though, because I feel like what they realized with Defenders is, hey, that didn't work out really well, so we don't need something to tie these seasons together quite so much. So we don't need Night Nurse.
I think Foggy showing up is the argument against what you're saying.
I mean, Foggy showing up was just like, oh, hey, cool. Yeah, that's how I got.
It's still them tying everything together.
It's tying everything together, but it's not at any point in time relevant. I mean, the Night Nurse tying everything together, that was relevant. I mean, like, because when she was there,
was it? How is it more relevant or less relevant than Foggy showing up?
I mean, there's multiple episodes, and she always does something that helps with the character development. So I mean, that's why it's a little bit more relevant. I guess you're making an argument
for her being better, a better addition to the season.
She's definitely. I mean, like, I would have loved to see her for sure, but at the same time, there was no real need to see her unless she was going to treat Trish. In which case, you're like, well, why would you need to treat Trish?
Yeah, I guess it's a point that doesn't need to be dwelled on. I guess my point is, there's like, to the extent that Foggy didn't like forward anything. What's the point? Like, why would it be better for him to show up other than the Night Nurse?
That's true. There's no argument for which character would have been better, but it was I don't know, that was kind of fun. I was like, hey, yeah, you're still relevant, cool. But I mean, like, I just think it goes to show that they're really not. And even like Kristen Ritter has said this. It's like, yeah, I don't think there's an intention of doing Defender season 2. I mean, I
well, not if they're going to
blown
approach
away.
it like season 1.
Exactly.
That's for certain.
Yeah, that's for sure. They're not. They shouldn't do it for sure.
That was underwhelming.
Yeah. It was really underwhelming. I mean, that was just not good. Anyways, getting back to this, like I said, I enjoyed the character story arcs. I enjoyed aspects of this season. Overall, not the biggest fan of it. It just wasn't cohesive to me. I wish they tied everything together a little bit better.
Yeah, and as I said, I think for me, and I don't need to speak for you. You've expressed yourself, but for me, what would have helped is if. Obviously, they can't take away the superhero stuff. So then, to the extent that you can't take away the super stuff, you need to lean into it a bit more and have
make it a little bit more relevant.
And have a villain that will help you. The way that Kilgrave so perfectly deals with what that season needed to be.
Yep.
And he's a character that doesn't show up until like episode 4 of that season anyway. But it's still like once he's in, you're like, yep, I get how everything ties back into him and Jessica.
Yep.
The fact that they wanted to get away from that, I think, hurt the season for me.
Right.
In that, when you're doing comic books, you hear every director however well it works out is up to the audience. But when you hear about a director talk about what they want to do with the villain, it's usually like, what serves the story? Like, what am I trying to get at, and how is that going to help?
Yeah.
And they didn't quite get there with this because it seemed like a group of people that wanted to do this very serious drama about these very serious subjects. All of that works well, but it's still framed in this superhero thing, and it gets awkward when you get to the end of the season. You're like, all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's super awkward because it would have been nice if I get at some point in the season, a big part of me was like, oh, they're going for the whole like this hero's her own villain. She has to overcome something. So by that virtue, what you're expecting is a villain, a physical embodiment of a villain that is just physically imposing onto the character and not actually a psychological threat like Kilgrave was in the first one, to allow her to actually be her own like barrier to overcoming this villain. But they never even pulled that through. I mean, I really thought they were going to do that with the mom, because like they already said, like the mom is like 10 times more powerful than you or whatever it is.
And that didn't really factor into much. I mean, yes, it would be like, she'd be like, oh, I guess we'll just stab her with these needles, which might slow her down because it slowed me down. And I was like, that's pretty much the only lip service they get. And it was like,
it was brutal because I was expecting at some point, I'm like,
did they ever even fight? Really? Like, yes, sorry,
they did fight a little bit.
But she would be like, I have to stop her from killing this person. Okay, fair enough.
I was more under the impression that the doctor was going to be more responsible from a mind control standpoint of the mom to like fight Jessica.
But he just loved her.
Yeah.
And was just like,
no, you're actually fully legit in love with her, as opposed to like the Kilgrave kind of thing again. But with the Kilgrave, but instead,
didn't he like leave his life's work just to be with her? He's like, totally. Let's just be alone in this thing. And
he left everything behind. And I was like, and the reason why I thought he would do that to like have that bit of control was that maybe the scientist had something like a motive that he thought would have been like, this is why we need to do this one thing. This is why I need to control this one person. This is what's going to save the world or something like that. So for him to have a story arc that was like, I'm motivated by quote unquote good, or what I deem to be good, and it's clashing with what everyone thinks is reality. Then I'm like, that would have been good, but it never actually happened. You're just like, but you're literally just trying to figure out how to be with your mom and how to, like, that's not interesting to me at all from a comic book story perspective.
Yeah, I think that's the unfortunate thing, is that it is a comic book at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's an interesting story in general.
And she's not like the Punisher, where you can at least be like, nah, he's just a regular guy that's good with guns. It's like, no, she's got superpowers, and a lot of the story is about like that they force these superpowers on her. That's how a lot of other people relate to her.
Absolutely.
They did mention the raft from Civil War, which was interesting. A second.
I mean, they're doing a lot more dialogue.
I didn't see any Stan Lee stuff.
No. Stan Lee
apparently
has
he's
never
in
cameoed
it. No, but he always is like in a poster in the like police station or something like that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that's how they do Stan Lee in Netflix. He's always like a poster. Apparently he was on a bus or something. Not physically. A picture of him. I don't know. I didn't see it.
I must have missed out because this was one of those shows where I was on my phone a lot for.
Yeah.
As opposed to being pulled in for.
No, I don't. Another thing I liked, we're going to wrap this up, but I liked the moment where that one cop wanted to help her, and he was just like, because a lot of us still remember when Kilgrave was here, and like I remember the idea of having my finger on the trigger while the gun's pointing at myself, and I was like, oh, I get it. That's why he would want to help her out. He's like, no, like I know you're good.
Yep.
But I guess that once again, that was also something that, I think that was one thing when his partner went to like get the mom. I'm like, are you an idiot?
Yeah.
I would never. I don't care. Like, I would rather be fired than dead. Like she's like, come here. I'm gonna put cuffs on you. I'm like, did no one brief you on what's happening
this
here?
is so
like,
dumb.
no chance.
I mean, we also could talk about like the character of Terry Chen's character, Price Cheng.
That guy. He like.
It was
trying to
whole
snipe
lot
them
of
at one
nothing.
point.
It was a whole lot of nothing, that character.
Well, except for that he's Malcolm's new boss.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing. I was like, ooh, slime. Like, traitors and all that kind of stuff. But
is Malcolm traitor, or is he just
he's
like,
not a
no,
traitor
I'm
at
going to
all.
get money now?
Malcolm's not a traitor. He's just
until-
like, you know what, this is frustrating working for a boss that doesn't want me to do anything.
It was frustrating watching him. But then when someone brought up the whole he's replacing addictions, I was like, I get it now. Like, he's never going to leave because now this is his fix of working with her. Like, he's going to replace
That's
drugs.
what all addicts do, is like find another form of addiction.
And there's that one scene where he's like, I don't do well with doing nothing. I'm like, okay, I get it. Because at first I was like, what does he get out of this? She's constantly ridiculous to him.
Yep.
And like, he isn't like, how could he be making that much money? She clearly doesn't take like big money cases. And then
his character made a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
From the addiction standpoint, you're like, you know what? From like having been an addict of like alcohol before, it's just like if you're not distracted, your mind constantly thinks like, oh, I could definitely drink some more whiskey right now.
That made sense to me. But at first I was just like, I can't take this. And then and it wasn't like Foggy. It was just more like,
Foggy's frustrating.
It was more like, come on, man, have respect for yourself. And then and then when it clicked in, like, oh, they're doing addiction stuff. Everyone is going through their own form of replacing some kind of vice. Yeah. I get it.
His character was just a whole lot of nothing.
Terry Chen.
I thought he would be like, ooh, he might be the bad guy. But
first I thought they were like changing it to be like, he's not a bad guy, and like he's actually trying to do the right thing, and he would be like a Harvey Bullock to Batman in terms of like, here's someone who actually does what the hero does, but the legal way. But then they made him like the sniper at one point. I'm like, oh, never mind.
Yeah,
like, they don't want to decide with anyone. Everyone is a bad guy and a good guy at all at the same time.
And that's the whole like thing. That's what I like from a philosophical level.
Yeah,
the exploration that everyone is good and bad. I love exploring that from a psychological standpoint. However, I do not like seeing indecisiveness in an entertainment show, especially.
Thank you, finally coming around to me.
No, I've always agreed with you. Like the individually, the characters were well written.
Yes,
it's just there was no cohesion of this being a.
They're more complex than usually you get. So I think that goes a long way. Is that you can't just box any, like maybe the superintendent, but like whoever, that guy, he seemed like a kind of a one note thing. But like
even then he wasn't, because it's like, ooh, he's xenophobic in the beginning where he's like, I don't want these supers around my kid.
Yeah, but did he really change that?
Reason. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, okay, you've seen my kid. We're gonna turn this around. Okay, cool, sweet.
Yeah, but I mean,
so like the idea, like I love philosophically exploring the idea that everyone is good and bad. It just doesn't make for a good linear storytelling piece from a comic book standpoint. It needed to be,
or even any
storytelling
storytelling because of those two different things clashing.
Yes. But I mean, it needed, and it was too complicated to work. Essentially, is what I said about this.
Yeah.
It needed something a little bit more grounded, a little bit more simple and digestible. But
that might have helped. As I said, unfortunately, they couldn't strip away all the superpower stuff. So. Couldn't. You're left with the two warring ideas going on.
Yeah. At some point, I thought they were going to send Jessica Jones to rehab, too. To really dig into the whole, like, I'm my own worst villain kind of idea. But, I mean...
They could probably still get there, but...
Probably could, but, I mean, it'd be hypocritical at this point. Because who would do it? Who would be like, you need to go to rehab? It can't be Trish. Trish is an addict. Her new family possibly could do it. Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
Yeah, you you can save that kid from falling out a window, but if you're around him long enough... That dad's going to find a reason to be like, hey, you know what?
Maybe you should
a little bit.
I mean, not to tell you,
especially if when he's. I mean, I guess they took care of the ex-wife because she's probably going to jail for trying to kidnap the kid.
Yes,
but if she ever gets out, she'll definitely be on them and being a watchful eye.
She'll be trying to take that kid back.
Yeah, so I think they still have that option in the third season.
They could. I'm really not interested in it. Though. I would much rather see season 3 of Jessica Jones versus Trish Walker, because clearly Trish Walker has powers now, and but the point is, there's no motivation to put them against each other, because they're just like,
I don't
Jessica
think
Jones is like,
they've already done they're against each other, and I think it would be.
And it's like,
but I don't think they have room for her to be like a sidekick either.
No, they don't have room for her to be a sidekick. That would be out of Jessica Jones's character. I mean, the closest they would have gotten was the Luke Cage stuff. In like,
I guess maybe it could be like Luke Cage again, like another powered person that goes out and they do stuff together.
Yeah, and the stuff with Trish. I mean, there's no it.
I mean, they aren't. They're at odds. Like they still would be against each other, but I don't think Trish would be able to muster the thing to be like, no, I'm going to fight her.
It's not even that. I just don't feel like it would. I don't think me as the audience would take it seriously, because I'm like, you guys are sisters. You guys quarrel all the time. Yeah, but she killed her mom. Yeah, but I mean, like, you'll get over it. I mean, like, because the thing is, you killed your mom, but you didn't know your mom was alive to begin with. When she came back, you didn't. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna love you with open arms and everything like that.
I disagree, because I think there was enough time for Trish to process that she cared about her mom when she came back, and I think that you're not gonna get over, like, if a random person did it, I can see you being like, oh, like I don't really know what you've got going on, but they are sisters, so for her to be like, why would you take away, like as a sister, you probably knew that I missed my mom and dad, and then you took that away from me. I don't think that's something you just easily get over.
I mean, what we're gonna get now is like a Foggy and like Daredevil relationship in season 2 of Daredevil, which is not gonna be great.
That was stupid
for anyone.
All right, let's rate this thing, baby.
I'm giving this a 7. I mean, I'm in 6 to 7, 6.5. I would say. And it's because, and I stand by it, I still believe the character arcs were amazing. It was really good philosophical storytelling to me. Mm-hmm. I loved that part of it. It just didn't have a clear purpose in this season for the main character, Jessica Jones. There was no driving force to me, really.
I'm giving it a 7.
Yeah.
One mark for every good episode they had.
Oh.
7, 8. 9, 10, 11, 12,
so you're telling
13.
me this could have potentially been a 13 out of 10?
No. It's just a stupid joke I made. But yeah, I gave it a 7 because once they, like, that showing, like, when the mom kills her boyfriend, and it's like, well, that certainly set her on a path. And in the idea that us as the audience knows that she did it because, I mean, you shouldn't have killed him, but, like, the fact that he was trying to take advantage of Jessica, but she was legitimately in love with him. That's interesting. I don't know that they can really go anywhere with that because they killed the mom off. But, like,
I mean, again, that relationship was to resemble addiction at the same time too. It's just like, it is literally addiction. Like that whole season is like every theme is addiction.
But like, I liked that. I thought that worked well. Obviously, I love the Jerry stuff.
Hogarth stuff was awesome.
Trish worked less well for me than you, but
Trish,
I thought
it worked well conceptually.
I think I will always bump up against her being like, "Oh, you can't believe you have powers." I'm like,
my issue with Trish is
trivializes what actually was going on with her. I felt like for her it was more than just, "I can't believe she has powers."
Yeah,
because she isn't an addict, so her addiction isn't being jealous of Jessica. Her addiction is wanting to feel like she has actual control, which is independent of. Yes, Jessica makes her feel insecure, but it's not like she would have felt better if Jessica didn't have the powers. That's the addiction
she would
part.
have felt better.
She still feels powerless with her mom who doesn't have powers. That's what I'm saying. True. She already feels that helplessness. Mm-hmm. So like to try and tie it, or like to give her that dialogue to tie it to Jessica is kind of like that's really missing the full scope of what's going on with her.
But I mean, like, the whole mom having powers over her was addressed by even Jessica being like, you are not supposed to talk to her at all. What are you doing coming back into her life and all that kind of stuff? So the mom was rendered powerless through the act of not being able to talk to her own daughters and all that kind of stuff. But it was given power.
I don't think so, because the damage is already done with Trish, right? Like, she already has that power, right? Like, Trish will reach out to her mom
Oh, she definitely
whenever
will. Especially now that she does have powers from that like weird spinal like injection.
I thought they were going to kill her, but apparently not.
I thought they were going to kill. I thought they should have killed her. I was just like, that would have actually been a little bit more interesting from a storytelling standpoint, because now you have Jessica Jones as like, you killed my mom.
But once again, no one's a bad guy, and everyone's a bad guy.
Yeah, no one is a bad
if you do
guy.
that, then she'll be like, oh, I hate that doctor.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah. So
anyway,
I don't know. Yeah, it was meh. I mean, it just wasn't cohesive storytelling. It was good storytelling from like individual characters, not cohesive.
there were some good story beats. It was maybe not the best overall story.
Yeah, absolutely. Will we see a season 3? Probably. We'll probably see season
I would watch
3.
season 3. Speaking of that, let's talk about Tomb Raider.
Let's move on to Tomb Raider.
What did you think of Tomb Raider?
Oh my god. I feel like this. It wasn't great.
Here's something. At the beginning, I was like,
it.
"Hey, man, this seems fun." And then I was like, and then I like had a sinking to like, oh yeah, none of this will mean anything at the end. Like when she was doing the bike stuff, I was like, oh, like this could be like a Fast and Furious just fun time. And then I was like, oh no, this means nothing. Like at no point does she need to use bike skills.
No,
this will not factor in.
Like it was really fun to me because like the beginning scenes with the boxing scene or the MMA or whatever,
she got beat up.
She got beat up real bad. But I'm like, okay, this is. I think what they're trying to do here is avoid the whole critique aspect of like, how is it that this one person can go from a bike carrier to all the way fighting this army, in the sense where they're like, no, she's got combat. Like they forced you to think like, hey, that stuff that you're going to critique her on later on, don't worry, we're giving you evidence of it.
It still
right
made
now.
me critique it because I'm like, oh, and she's good at it now.
Yeah.
What?
That was my
against people who are actually trying to kill her instead of that person that was just like sparring with her.
I know. It was just like, wait, there's a huge jump here. And they kind of use the whole like, hey, we're going to use this ship sailing scene as a training montage that never worked out properly. It's just like, I'm sorry, you pulling some rope, developing your lats is not going to help make you a better fighter.
I didn't see that. Here's what I'll say. I will say the two good things about this movie for me. Mm-hmm. Maybe people love it. I don't know.
Yeah.
One, Alicia Vikander is a very charming person.
Yes.
She is like Chris Hemsworth in that, like, I'm just like, yeah, I'm charmed by this. I will continue to watch you lead this movie.
Correct.
Like, you are a star in that way.
Carried the whole movie.
Yeah, you are a star in that way. Excellent. I was just, like, there's a couple of actors where you're just like, huh, you know how to lead. And I'm not talking about like Robert Downey Jr.'s who've like lived the life and you can. I'm talking about like these younger people who are just like right away. You're like, huh, all right.
Yeah, I'm jealous of those people.
Yeah, and Alicia Vikander's clearly one of those people where it's like, yeah, I would watch. I liked the little banter she had with the villain from. There's two villains from Ant-Man in this movie.
Yeah,
when she's like,
I noticed that too.
The person who's playing Ghost.
Yep.
Was like her friend at the boxing gym, like that never comes back.
Yeah.
And I liked their little banter. Like I was like, yeah, I'd watch more of this. I liked when she was with her courier friends, and I was like, yeah, I would watch this.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I knew that none of those people would come back. Well,
why would they come back?
Yeah. Well, the guns people came back for no good reason.
That's true.
But yeah, so that worked for me. And then the one time they actually like really leaned into like what it's like to play my very limited experience of playing Tomb Raider, of like solving puzzles. Like I liked that moment where they're like they needed to solve the riddle and put the different colors in, because I was like, yeah, I know she's not going to die, but there's like 6 other people in the room that could die. So now it's really about like how many of these people will die? Like how many? Like how are they going to get this? And I just thought it was well staged. And it worked in that moment.
I did appreciate
in a way that nothing else worked.
Yeah, I did appreciate the fact that they made it was like, this was the first time where you're having clear elements of video game things in this for like, oh, okay, we got to figure this out. Although it didn't really make the most sense, but at the same time, you're like, it's well written into the storyline. It was well integrated.
Yeah, I think the way it was staged, because a lot of it, like a lot of my complaints early on are like, some of the fight scenes just happen in the pure dark, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening.
Yes, I'm like, why?
Why did they do this?
Choose to do this? I'm like, I don't understand.
And then I just have to be like, maybe this is like what Tomb Raider is like. I don't know, because I don't play the games, and I certainly don't play the new ones.
No, I haven't played the games. I'm interested in the new ones because I hear they're pretty phenomenal. But like the old ones. I'm not going back to those kind of graphics. It's just not going to work. That's my primary complaint. I mean, like if you remaster Tomb Raider 1, the entire PS1 franchise into HD graphics, let's talk. I will play that for sure. I will, but it's not like cheese nostalgia like stuff that gets me like really really excited. Like I will play Super Mario World without a doubt because that's nostalgia. But if you were to ask me to play the same kind of game as a brand new game, I'm like, I could pass on that.
I'm not. It didn't work for me, but I don't know if that's because I don't like or don't care about Tomb Raider.
I don't care about Tomb Raider, which is why I was like, good. I'm going to be objective about this film.
Yeah,
as opposed to having a bias towards. I mean, like, don't get me wrong.
But maybe this was like one for the fans, where like if you really care about Tomb Raider, they got all the details right.
Probably,
because the one thing I remember about Tomb Raider is like that kind of puzzle stuff. It's what made me not want to play it. I was like, I don't want to like. But then Uncharted got me to do it. But I was just like, nah, I'm not doing this. I just want to shoot people and fight.
That's exactly what I do as a video
but
game.
like
I don't want
doing that one scene where they like did that, and I kind of like when they opened up the tomb.
Well, maybe I won't. Scene. There was like a couple of scenes where they had to like solve puzzles, like a ton of different scenes.
No,
like,
I don't think you could name 3.
Well, I mean, there's the Japanese boxes that she was left. The first one is like, okay.
I don't count that. I'm talking about set pieces, not like
set pieces.
Look at my phone. I'm tapping things. Oh, it opened. I'm talking about like actual like action set pieces. There was like 3.
So
maybe.
Yeah, but I see. Because I consider that first like little Japanese puzzle box that she gets after she was supposed to sign the will the first time. Like, upon the signature, it was instructed that I give you this, and then she's like, "Oh, I'm going to take this and solve it right away." And then, "Oop, I'm not signing that."
Yeah, but there's no tension in that.
There's no tension in that.
But that's what I'm saying. Like the one they wanted to do a set piece that worked.
True, it did work very very well there.
I didn't. Yeah, none of that stuff mattered to me. Like any of the I kept waiting for Kristen Thomas Stewart, whatever her name. What is her name anyway? I don't remember. Kristen Stewart Thomas.
What?
The woman who played Anna.
Scott Thomas. Yeah.
Kristen Scott Thomas.
Scott Thomas.
Yeah. I was like, obviously she's the bad guy. They're not hiring this woman to just be in this movie as a nice person.
Of course. Yeah.
They already did that in Darkest Hour. Now they're going to get her to be a villain. And then I was like, oh, you got to wait till the next movie for her to be. Because as soon as he's like, oh, yeah, I speak to someone on the other end of the thing, I'm like, it's obviously what's her face. Yeah. Let's get to it. Because my whole thing was like, Walton Goggins does nothing in this movie. No, I don't even know. Like, is he a bad guy? I was like,
he's a waste of a bad guy. I'm like, I was so excited. I remember being like super excited about.
Yeah, I was never excited. I
was just like, you know what? This is awesome. I love seeing Walton Goggins as a bad guy. And I was just like, oh, this was really safe for you. You played this really, really safe.
Well, what is he supposed to do? They wrote a character who was like, they clearly have leverage over him, his kids. Yeah, and he's got to go do something. Yeah. And I was like, is he a bad guy, or like does he want to save his daughters?
Yeah.
Or see his daughters.
Boring. But that was the thing. Like even during that time, it was like, listen, it's been 7 years. I want to go home. Like while
he also said he can't talk to anyone, but almost everyone spoke English. So what does he mean he can't talk to anyone?
Well, I'm pretty sure like that part was confusing to me. I'm like, don't you think you would have like talked to some of your mercenaries? It's been 7 years. Like
he's like, oh, you're the first person that got to talk to him. Like, is everyone there just not an English speaker? And then like everyone he interacts with speaks English. I'm like,
because it's not.
All right, you definitely spoke to them before.
Like that was weird to me because I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like that doesn't make sense to me. It's like if you're saying that, I would assume you meant something to be about of the tombs. Like, oh, like we're both archaeologists, competing archaeologists, and everything like that. They have my kids. That's my motivation for to continue doing this thing. And you want to save the world. I get that, and that's where we're butting heads. And we could actually talk about the archaeology behind this. That would have made sense to me. But I'm like, no, you're literally using dynamite to blow up everything. So you're not an archaeologist whatsoever.
No, he was
you
not
just
an
want the shit to get out of there. Like that didn't.
Yeah,
make
he
sense
was
to
fine
me.
to just cut her finger off and be like, well, let's go.
Yeah, he was just like, oh, snippy, and then that was
I don't know why she shoved the finger down his throat. I know we're jumping around, but like, I was like,
we're definitely.
I feel like that would just make him a zombie and he'll come back for you.
But it wasn't clear that it was a zombie. It was just like, oh, here's your black.
Well, the one guy got shot up and then came back alive, so it was kind of like a zombie type thing.
I guess so.
Yeah, the black guy.
Yeah.
The one guy actually was diseased, and then when he got diseased, he shot the black guy.
Right.
And then that guy, I'm assuming, also got cut because they both touched the thing.
Right.
He came back, and it like where he got touched, you could see it was coursing, and that's what reanimated him. And I feel like that's what could happen with I don't think they're ever going to bring him back, but I'm just saying, like, in the moment, I would have been like, I'm just going to destroy this somewhere else. I wouldn't put it in him and make him, like, superpowered.
That was so dumb to me in the sense where I'm like, you could have just killed him, and that disease wouldn't have come back or anything like that. Because, the biggest issue there to me was it's like, are you sure that the blast radius is going to kill this guy and incinerate him? So
that's what I'm saying. She had no guarantee.
Yeah,
she knows that they're going to blow up the ground zero of it, but she doesn't have any thing that it'll blow him up.
Yeah, I'm like, your dad was going to blow up the Himiko thing, and that was the containment from what you knew. But then you're going ahead and infecting this guy because it looks cool from a visual standpoint.
They didn't even get much out of that because
it didn't do much. Yeah. You could have just kicked him down there and it would achieve the same thing, and he would have gone crazy.
And it probably would have been easier to kill him if he didn't have that in himself, and you kick him down there.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you're just like, now you got a rabid guy running around.
I did like that they set up that she's better at kicking people.
Yeah.
At the beginning, like, use your kicks. You're better at it.
They really set up that. It's like, you are not good at punching. You're a kicky person. Yeah. So your final move has to be a kick.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, thank you for explaining that. And it was like, to me, someone watching Star Wars, The Force Awakens, listening to all the criticisms, and it's like, okay, guys, in order to get the fan base to not critique us the way that they critiqued Rey, we have to push everything like down everyone's throat to be like, good, she's good at kicking, she's good at this, she's got cardio fitness and everything like that. That's why she can run through the.
I remember the first time they show her running, I was like, this is tiring me out. Yeah. I would never. And I'm like, really I guess she's a runner, and I was just like, she probably could do it, but it just. I looked at it and I was like, this is disgusting to me. I hate this. Everything about this. I wish she had a motorcycle.
Oh, running, yeah.
Yeah, I just was like, this is exhausting, and I'm not doing anything.
I will tell you one thing, man. Like me running, my races themselves, it is exhausting themselves being there. So I get what you're saying. Yeah, this was just fair. Like, the one thing I will say about this movie is that it really paces itself well, in the sense where it knows what it needs to achieve, and it knows it needs to be high octane action the whole time through. So at no point in time you're like, oh, I really wish I didn't have this one scene, because each scene leads up to something like relatively exciting. The only time that there's a lull was like, oh, you found your dad, and you didn't fully commit to him being crazy, so he snapped out of it really, really fast. It was just like,
I was like,
oh, crazy.
Yeah, but to your point, that would slow the movie down if they had to work on getting him not crazy.
Yeah, so they paced that really, really well. And at that point, I'm like, I just didn't even care. I'm like, whatever. Like,
because when he snapped out, he was kind of like, I've been surveying this whole thing. You see all his mask, like, so you're not crazy.
So you're not crazy.
You've got a good hold on what's going on. He's like, I've been placing like misdirections and stuff so that they'll never find it. I'm like, yeah, it seems like you've been keeping your mind active.
Yeah, it's like you clearly know that that's a person in front of you, but you're doing these things like, not again, not again. Like,
well, they needed a "Daddy loves you" moment.
Yeah. But at the same time,
do you remember this? Like, I feel like if I were hallucinating, I'd be like, yeah, I remember that. I'm me making this hallucination.
But also, like, if I was hallucinating, my first instinct is like, I'm going to try to touch this thing to see if it's real.
Yeah, he never tried.
He was like,
well, I guess he had to sew her up. That must have made it real for him.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm glad he had all that stuff there.
I really like the fact that it's like, hey, we have the security measure of tying this rope to make it easier to get into this cave, but it was not necessary the entire time. Like, it was never necessary. And
probably for him it was necessary. He's probably less athletic than she is.
Sure, but at the same time, it's like, you didn't even try to prevent her from getting in the cave or like.
Well, he probably thought he was alone forever.
Yeah, but then why pull up the rope if he thought it was a hallucination? He ran.
Oh yeah, he did run from her. But I got the sense he thought he lost her. It's all the symptoms of him being crazy up until he's not crazy.
Yeah, and up until it's like, oh yeah, no, you're a real person.
So up until they need him to not be crazy.
Shave my beard.
Yeah, and also retroactively not be crazy.
Yep. That was it. So that was like, oh, okay, let's go over this really, really fast. But it would have slowed the whole movie down from this high octane level that it had to this point. It was. Here's
another thing I like. The director's name is Roar. That's cool.
Okay.
Well, I didn't really like the movie, so like I don't want to be mean.
I think. See, here's the one thing. Like, I feel bad for Dominic West, who played Lord Richard Croft, because like at some point I'm like, did they just recast him as Luke Evans? Like, did Luke Evans start to play that character?
Yeah, Luke Evans younger though.
Yeah, but I mean, like, if you look at his beard and you're like, huh, it looks like Luke Evans. So I felt bad for him. He's like, oh, he probably thought this was going to be a big break for him. But people think he's Luke Evans right now. That's
no, I think I'm pretty sure he's happy with the Wire recognition.
Yeah. Daniel Wu's Lu Ren. That was really confusing to me. Because I'm like,
I thought he was going to be a bad guy at one point.
I didn't think he was going to be a bad guy ever. I thought like they did exactly what he was supposed to do.
Yeah, he's just a sidekick. But I also was like,
but why didn't they kill him in the camp? I was like, you clearly caused a ruckus.
No, she always needs a male sidekick.
Yeah,
that's a thing.
But yeah, I know. But like, it didn't make sense to me in the sense where like, why didn't
Goggins, when they had the chance?
Yeah, why didn't they?
Well,
kill
it's the same reason why she kills off one guy, and then when she gets to Walton Goggins, some reason she can't kill him. I'm like, they both had guns. They both had the opportunity to kill her dad, but she's like, "Put your gun down." I'm like, "What do you mean? Kill this guy?" Like, it's just because it needs to be written that way. Yep. There's no real reason for not killing it. We're not going to get to the bottom of it.
That's what I mean. Is like this is one of those things that doesn't make sense. I'm like, you're killing a guy for coughing.
Yeah, I can see that, but I feel like the more bothersome thing was when she had the shot, she didn't take it on Walton Goggins.
Yeah, that is very bothering. Actually, a lot.
But yeah, like also, I was telling Pauline when I was leaving the movie, like what I didn't like about their relationship was they made jokes, and I was like, "There's no jokes in this." Like you went from like hanging out on a boat to being enslaved by the person who killed your dad.
Yep.
When she says, "I'm sorry, I brought you here," I was like, "Oh, that's the first time that dialogue means something," because it's like, "Yeah, you should be sorry," and then he makes a joke about it, and I'm like. I would not make a joke. I would be like, fuck you.
I'd be like, yeah, no, I'd totally be like that. I'm like, it's your fault up here. It's like, we warned
this is
you
ridiculous.
About this. Like, you paid me a lot of money, which is gone now because the boat's gone. It's like, literally.
Yeah, they shouldn't have made him be like, what am I going to use this money for, buying a coffin? Because then it just sets up that he knows it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
If he was just like a drunk who was like, yeah, I'll take your money, and then the accident happens, it would be better. But the fact that he was aware, even while he was drunk, that it was a bad idea, it's just like, dude, really? I guess that's why you make jokes when the bad stuff happens. But I was just like, I wouldn't. I would be like, they made it seem like his drunkenness was exacerbated by his dad dying, and like. But I just feel like that would be a thing that would be like, I'm really mad right now.
Well, no, they made his drunkenness related to his gambling.
I don't know about that.
That's what I got from it. I mean, but that's primarily because that is a Chinese cultural thing.
Yes,
it's one of those things where I picked up on.
I'm not
really
saying
like,
his drunkenness happened because of that. I'm saying it was exacerbated by his. So it was probably already there, and this can be a cultural thing. But I'm saying it probably got worse after he was like, you know what? Totally. I guess my dad's gone.
But the issue I had with it too is just like, okay, wait, hold on. Your dad's gone along with Laura's dad. You have your dad's boat. The original email was about your dad's boat. They survived the island, and the boat got back. How did that happen? Unless like the kid, unless you, Lu Ren, brought the boat back and therefore abandoned your dad and Laura's dad on the island, and you're like, oh, you know what? I guess I should go back. It's been 7 years. I should pick them up. Like, like that to me.
Was it the same boat? Because I thought there was a boat, and she just had a name, Lu Ren, and that's when she's talking to those thieves, and she's like, I'm looking for Lu Ren. She never said a boat name.
There was a picture.
Yeah, but I don't think it's the same boat because they're like, oh, you're looking for the Endurance, which is something she would have just been able to do if she had an actual picture of the boat.
I guess so.
Well, I think she only had a name because she was like, oh, he was going to buy a boat from this guy.
Right.
And then if she had the boat, she would know the name, and she would have been like, I'm looking for this boat instead of I'm looking for Lu Ren.
Yeah.
And then, that's why they have the opportunity, which I guess was fun, but I was also like,
and it was still
them chasing, but I was just like, are they really going to kill her out in like the open? Like,
it was really
it seems like once she evades you, that's it. And I get why it was fun to look at them chase her, but I was just like, are those kids really willing to kill her? Like this, like that's crazy. Like they're right in the open of everyone.
But those kids, like, because the thing is, like that, those kids are tied with the triads and everything like that. Because, well, I mean, the way it is in China, you as a kid, you don't make those kind of moves without people backing you up, and you're most likely making those moves because you're stealing for a triad gang.
They need it.
So the idea that if they made an attempt, but they would come back empty-handed means that they would have felt repercussions of their own. So that made sense to me from a purely like Chinese gangster standpoint. Like cultural standpoint, that made sense to me. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, well, why are you letting this kid go? You should really legit just kick them into the thing.
Just kill them.
No, just don't kill them. It's just like,
I thought you were like, they're gonna die anyway. You might as well kill them.
No, I'm just like,
they get tortured.
Like, there's water right there. They're not gonna drown. Kick them into the water.
Well, you don't know that they're not gonna drown.
But okay, sure. But either way, it's just like, okay, but you're gonna put someone in a headlock, and then while they like, and you're telling me that they can't reach their knife when they're in a headlock to stab you?
I think this movie is better than I thought, because clearly she's not good at like undoing her bad guy. What am I trying to say? Dismantle her bad guys.
Oh, disarming stuff.
Yeah, like because she put a thing that would make her ultimate villain way more powerful in his mouth.
She's like,
and then was like, and now kick.
Yeah, just now I'm gonna kick you.
Yeah, maybe they were just being consistent with her character. She is not good at knowing how to disarm situations.
No, she is not. She's just like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to choke last minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say. This movie was not great.
This movie was not fantastic. It was.
I still liked it better than Justice League. I will say that.
Well, that's not hard to say. At all. Because, I mean, like, Justice League means so much. It meant so much to us.
Yeah, but the signs were there that I was probably not going to like it.
Oh, for sure. But at the same time, the signs are here in itself that we weren't going to like it. I mean, the only thing...
You know what? I went on a roller coaster, because at the beginning I was like, maybe I will like this movie. Yeah. I went in being like, this is going to suck. And then I was like, you know what? I'm having a good time. This might be good. Yeah. And then it got to where I thought I was going to get, and I was like, oh, never mind.
Well, that was the issue. Well, that was my thing, is like, during this whole movie, I'm like, I'm having a good time. This is fun. This is like what I would expect from the movie Hardcore Henry. And the idea of like, there's
I didn't like
action.
That movie either.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm just like, it's one of those movies
you might
where
like it.
I would just turn off my brain and be like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for the ride right now. That was what this movie was.
I think the ride worked better for you in terms of, you keep saying nonstop action, whereas like there was a lot of downtime for me.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's not me putting a value on that. I'm just saying, I'm glad it worked for you. I was really hoping
it worked for me,
because I was just like, I don't care about this. The only thing that captured my like attention and like actually not actually but figuratively had me on the edge of my seat was when the floor is coming out from under them, because they didn't rush through it. I felt like they rushed through a lot of other things that are tropes from the video game, but that one was actually like, no, we're spending time with this. We're going to set it up
with the color puzzle one.
Yeah, and they did a good job, like I said, of, we obviously know she's not going to die, but like there's still other people at stake in the room. And I kind of like that it was like the once bad guy, like they need to work together to get this done. Like
I love
all
that.
Of that like
that
worked
great.
In a microcosm of like, this scene is clearly for me the strongest scene because it did. And I did kind of like when they're at the tomb and like messing with your expectations of, is that thing going to just come up and be a ghost, or like, and then Walton Goggins is immediately like, haha, you idiots, it's on a crank, like whatever. Like I thought that worked well as well. And then pretty much everything else I was just like, nah.
I like the visual of the perfectly preserved body, and then all of a sudden the oxygen just came in and it's like, boom, decomposition. I really enjoyed that. There's a lot of visuals of the actual tomb itself that was really, really fantastic to me.
Like when they're down, like when they go down. Yeah,
like
that shot,
handmaidens and all that kind of stuff. That was like really, really good visual stuff. I loved it.
Good work, Roar.
Yeah, absolutely. And like even the Himiko like storyline that they had, that whole myth and everything. I'm like, that was great. And then getting to the tomb, they're like, wait.
Yeah, Lara was like,
here.
oh, wait.
She sacrificed herself. Don't touch. And it was like, oh, yeah, there we go.
The one thing I didn't like was how many times they did like those like voiceover memories of like, Lisa needs braces. Like it was like,
plan.
It was like, one life is worth millions. And I'm like, yeah, he just said that. Yeah. As an audience member, I can remember that. I don't need you to go like, this is what it was like when she was 5, then 16, and then and like 10 seconds ago.
It wasn't like one of those situations where in like Batman they have that flashback to like, or if they kind of went like, why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up. And it's like, and then fight again. It wasn't like that. It was like, okay, this was literally insignificant because, like, to your point, he says that like a few scenes beforehand. It wasn't something that he said to her as a child, because you're like, if you said that to her as a child, what context are you saying that to a child for? It's
a lot of the things he said, I was kind of like, nah.
Yeah, it was really weird.
But you're right. Like he just said it because it was actually germane to the situation he was in. And then when it happens again, I can be like, yeah, I get it. I didn't need that. Like, remember when he said that? I'm like, yeah, I do, and everyone else does.
I don't get the dad's motivation to hunt for these relics. I don't.
He didn't want his.
He wanted.
Wait, did he know that woman, Kristen Stewart? I know her name's not Kristen Stewart. Kristen Scott Thomas. Did he know she was evil?
I feel like not.
I feel like some of the stuff he said was like hinting, because once again they do voiceovers of like, well, your job's never done, Lisa needs braces. I feel like that was kind of the idea of doing that voiceover, that he had a suspicion that you're gonna need to keep an eye on everything.
Here's the thing, like, he knew these things, and it was so dumb in the sense where I'm like, you had a box of research on this.
Did he think like
what the hell?
Did he think like, if I make that woman in charge of Laura, she'll be too busy like raising my kid to do the evil stuff?
I have no clue.
I actually liked when, I guess this was the other uneven thing, but like I liked that he actually got mad at her for not burning the stuff.
I love that. That was
like,
great.
What?
I told you to do one thing.
What did you not understand about burn everything?
And you just handed it over to him. What the hell?
Because the reason I didn't like it in the moment was kind of like, it was like, he's like, well, at least you burnt my stuff, and she's like, oh, and I'm like, this isn't a comedy beat. What do you mean? Like, that's not a comedy beat.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was what it was at that point. It was not good. God, there were so many. The thing that bothered me is like, okay, so the father must have known on some level, even like the Trinity stuff, because like, okay, let's assume you were on the island. Well, he was on the island for 7 years, monitoring stuff and seeing the logos on the boxes, and must have been like, I mean, even like Laura was like, hey, you know what? Are all these companies ours? Including this company? And then this is like, ooh, this is ties to that. Like, at what point did he not make that connection to be like, hey, by the way, our company back home is related to this, so you gotta snuff this out? Or he just never has that dialogue with her whatsoever.
Nothing about what you said makes me think I would like the movie any better. Yeah. I'm just like, this is all stuff that would make my eyes roll in the movie, and it probably would made more sense. But I'm also like, I don't care, man. Yeah. That movie was all about her falling out of that plane. I feel like that was like their big thing.
Yep.
Because it's the only one that was like lit properly and like actually out in the open. Like that's clearly what they cared.
Promo stuff,
yeah,
sure.
Like they cared about that, and everything else. I feel like
really
they're just
proud
like,
of that
as
scene.
long as we get to that.
Yeah, they were really proud of that scene.
Oh, yeah.
They found a way to really milk it out a lot longer than just the initial jump. I'm like, that's interesting. And then the part that pissed me off, I'm like, wait, where did that bag come from in the plane? Like,
oh, it's a crashed plane that still had its parachute in it.
Yeah. Oh, right. That was. I thought it was one of her bags. Sorry.
No.
Sorry. Never mind. It was a parachute. Never mind.
Yeah.
Completely.
I still think it was a bit much that she was able to hold on to it.
Oh, it was a lot. It was way over the top.
And then I liked. You know what I did like though is that when she got stabbed in the thing, that Walton Goggins punched her there later, and I was like, good bad guy move.
Yeah.
You know where they're hurt. Get them.
That's right. Yeah. This is.
I mean, that's it. I don't have anything else to say about this movie.
We're beating a dead horse at this point. Like, it was just disappointing to me, because the funny thing is, even before the show, so I knew, like, when I saw a couple of articles that was like, is Tomb Raider gonna knock Black Panther off the top office? I'm like, no, it's not. It's clearly not gonna do that. Here's my reasoning why. It is like, when you did the pre-sales for Tomb Raider, you didn't even bother to host it in the biggest cinema showing. Because I watched this at Fairview, so they have the IMAX Ultra AVX screens and all that kind of stuff. The pre-release for this was in one of the regular theaters.
Interesting.
So it was just like, oh, okay, so you didn't believe in it that much. So obviously it's
it's a Warner Brothers movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably don't have much faith in anything right now.
No, probably not. That makes sense.
Except for Aquaman, which is what we're going to do at the end of the year.
Yay.
My man! No, I think it was as good as I was ever going to think. Do you want to rate it now? Or?
Yeah, it was as good as a video game movie could have been, ever, I feel. I mean, I still don't think there's a good video game movie except for Mortal Kombat. The first Mortal Kombat movie, and that's because it was like
probably didn't age well, but yeah,
it doesn't age well at all. And that's what makes it so much greater now. It's the fact that it's like, oh, this is really cheesy. This is hilarious.
I bet I would still enjoy it.
I still enjoy it because I'm like, the reason why is because you have a video game there that doesn't have much of a storyline.
Well, the storyline is easy. Just there's a tournament, you got to fight people, and you'd probably fight them to death.
Yes,
and
but
it's like, okay, good.
To give each character a little bit more backstory was all that movie needed to be better than the video game for.
Yeah.
This, I still contest the idea that turning a video game with a 8 to 12 hour main storyline into a movie is just not going to be doable.
Yeah, there's that, and then the other thing. This is not my original idea, but I endorse it. The idea that when you're playing the video game, you actually have a say in what happens, even if you're on rails and you don't know it.
Yep.
You are making things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, at any rate, when you're watching a movie, you're taking a step back because
you're going along
way more passive than active, and so now you don't have any say in what's going on. Right. So for people when they read books and like, I can't believe they took this part out, it would probably be more frustrating to be like, I can't do anything. Because when you're reading a book, the story is the story. You can add flourishes in your mind, but the story is the story. Whereas in the video game, I guess the story is the story, but you feel if you're engrossed in it, you feel like you're living it and doing stuff because you're actually making the stuff happen.
And that's the point.
And I think that's why it will always feel bad. Like, I don't think that any movie they're like, oh man, if only people could have interacted with the movie, it would have been better. I don't think I think it comes, your idea of the 12 hours trying to be truncated into 2 mixed with the idea of like it's this passive thing and you feel at a disadvantage always makes for not a great experience.
It doesn't do well.
So let's rate this.
I'm giving this a 4. I mean, and that sucks because
I just remember what I'm giving, and I take back the face I made. At first, I was like, "Oh, we're not doing Jessica Jones." All right, continue.
I hate giving this a 4 because Alicia Vikander was the best part of this movie. She carried the whole thing, but at the same time, it's just like the movie itself was not good. Like even this is my biggest thing, and nobody will notice this, but when you have Chinese actors speaking Chinese in a movie, it sounds awful at this. Like, Daniel Wu has never been a good actor from the Chinese acting side of things because his
that's why he went to Into
is
the Badlands.
Not good. His accent is horrible when it comes to Chinese. And it's like me speaking Chinese in the sense where like you're clearly an Asian American that has learned to speak Chinese and didn't bother to take on the accent part of it. In the sense where we would be having I would
yeah, they didn't give him a lot of Chinese. That's true.
Exactly. I would like, and the reason why I think this is important is because when people focus on their accents, it completes the character. But when you hear 100%. Like a bad accent, it pulls you out of that character. So for me, I can never see Sophie Turner as Jean Grey because I think her American accent is horrible. But when you have someone like what's his face, the guy that plays House,
people don't like his American accent either. I don't get it. Hugh Laurie.
Hugh Laurie. I love his American accent. I'm like,
I don't like when he speaks with his regular accent. I'm like, yo, just speak like House all the time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I'm like, I'm so convinced you worked so hard on your accent that I'm like, that is a character to me, as opposed to like, oh, all of a sudden you go into you speak Chinese and then the accent's off and you're like, well, now I know you're acting. This is nonsense.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, not that I didn't know that they were acting. It's just like now you're making it more obvious. So
be real, Ben. You didn't know that this wasn't a documentary until he started speaking Chinese.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah,
it was a documentary. I'm giving this a 4.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 5.7 because I feel like I give Justice League 5.5, and I refuse to give it less than or even the same as Justice League.
That's a good point. I mean, what did I rate Justice League?
I don't know.
I'd probably give it a 3. Or knowing
I feel like you raised your work while we were talking about it, but it didn't breach 5.
No, it didn't cross 5. I mean, my issues with this, I'm standing by my.
No, I'm not saying you got to change. I'm saying I had a better time with it than Justice League. I didn't have a sinking feeling the whole time that just got worse.
No.
I was actually, it was just like, you know what, I could like this. And then I was like, yeah, let's see if Vikander's good. And then it ended, I was like, good, I'm not watching the sequel.
Yeah.
We're not going to do this on Spoiled Rotten.
The moment for me that was like, I'm having fun with this movie. This is high action. The moment that it stopped being fun was when they in Act 2, when they went to China. And I'm like, when they went to Hong Kong, I'm like, this makes a lot of sense to me that you're going to Hong Kong to get a ship to go to the Japanese Sea. Like, that's way over there.
I was thinking about that, and then I was like,
me whatsoever.
I don't care.
I'm like, why wouldn't you go to the
I was like, wait, why aren't these Japanese people?
Yeah, I'm like, go to the Japanese ports. What the hell are you talking about? Like, this is just, you made it, like, you showed us on a map where it was. Hong Kong's nowhere near that. Why did you do that? Except for getting, well, I guess, no, the whole point that made was, like, you got to find the Lu Ren person. And I
don't know why he couldn't be Japanese.
But even then, back to the email thing, this is my biggest part that I was like, really, really, like, why do they do that kind of deal? They're like, are you Lu Ren? Yes. Then this must be your email. No. Oh, that was my dad's email sent from my dad's email account. I'm like, well, why was it signed your name? Because it wasn't explained that your dad had a very similar name that phonetically translated into English writing.
He just said he has the same name as me.
Really?
Yeah, he flat out said, yeah, that's my dad who has the same name as me. Now leave me alone.
That's so weird, man. That's
his actual line. She's like, no, this is Lu Ren. And then he's like, yeah, that's my dad who has the same name as me. Now leave me alone.
That's weird. I've never seen a Chinese person name someone Junior. Because
I also thought about that. I was like, is that a thing? I feel like that's not a naming convention.
It's not a thing. It's just definitely not.
It was needless, but who cares? Like, I don't care about this movie. I was just like, yeah, it's done good.
Here.
Yeah, great. It's done.
I did enjoy seeing what's his face.
Walton Goggins.
No,
hilarious.
Frost.
Nick Frost. I thought that was his like character. I'm like, no. Oh, so there's 2 people from Into the Badlands and 2 people from Ant-Man and the Wasp. Yep. Excellent movie. I give it a 10. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. This has been Spoiled Rotten, where if you have 2 people from something else I know, then I will like your movie.
That's all we take. But yeah, Nick Frost was in this. I really enjoyed him for that brief little moment. I'm like,
he didn't have enough to do. I mean, not that I want his character expanded, but I just thought maybe there would be multiple trips to that thing before they go to Hong Kong. Because I was kind of like, that sucks that she doesn't have the guns, but I realized they were doing the new version of her for the meat of the movie, and then it's going to lead into the old version of her because she had the ponytail. Excellent. Let's wrap this up and say thank you very much for listening. Please go to dorkshelf.com to see our podcast, because that's where we're rolling with them now. That's our thing.
Rolling.
If you want to see more episodes of this podcast from past seasons, you can go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. We also have a Twitter now, so that's at tdfspoiled. You can follow Dorkshelf on Twitter at Dorkshelf.
Yep. And I promised you guys last time.
You shouldn't promise anything.
I shouldn't have promised you guys anything.
I said let it happen. If it happens, it happens.
I'm going to do it, but unfortunately, I got to the point where once I started writing, I became overly critical of my own writing, and therefore started changing things, and that's why it's not posted, because I got way too critical of what I started writing.
Well, when it gets posted, it'll be posted, and you can follow us on Twitter to see when it gets posted.
There you go.
Thank you very much for listening. We had a great time recording this, and the construction's happening. That's why I'm trying to wrap this up.
All right, everybody. You have a good week. Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.